The residents at UK are very independent, and one of the first things that you really get a taste of that with is a rotation selection. I mean, we let you select your own rotations. We do it as a group. Generally, we go out to dinner and just eat and have fun, and then we sit around the table. And if you've ever done a fantasy football draft, it's kind of like that. We just kind of go around the table and we ask everybody, what's your number one choice and when would you like it? So if you're really interested in oncology and you want to do that early in the year so that you can explore options for our PGY2 early commit, we make sure that those rotations have some openings so that you can get early exposure, reaffirm some of the areas that you think are interests, or maybe even explore areas that you've never done before. It gives you a great opportunity to meet the preceptors in that area and get a feel for if you'd want to stay as a PGY2 in that area potentially. So, we go around that first time and ask for your number one choice for rotation and when you want it. And, once everybody's kind of been able to say what they want to do and when, then we kind of lock that in and we move on to your number two choice. And that really allows you to prioritize not only the rotations and the electives that you take, but when you take them. So you can be strategic about your year, not just from an early commit standpoint, but also just how you're going to build on your experiences. And, you may have conferences or vacations and things like that are coming up that you want to plan for as well. So we really give you a lot of flexibility. Our schedule for rotations is a really big puzzle. We're pretty good at working that puzzle and making it work. So that's kind of how it goes. We go round and round the table. And after the second pick is done, you go to the third all the way until everybody's got all the rotations and all their months sort of selected out. We do have a lot of elective options, and certainly any of the required rotations you could sort of double up on and take as an elective as well. If you had a specific interest in that area, there may be other options within those required rotations that would give you a little bit of a different slant on that rotation a second time around, give you a little bit of variety. We really let you pick from a wide variety of electives, and there's times when if there's something that you have in mind that we don't have, that we can explore going outside the institution or partnering with people who maybe don't traditionally have a rotation that may be able to provide something for us. So we really work very hard to individualize your experience in your rotation selection at UK. You drive a lot of that. And so we depend on your consideration and deliberation for what you want to do. And then we help you facilitate that. As program director, I'm often asked what makes for a successful applicant. And we look for a lot of different things in applications, and everybody brings their own strengths to the mix. So it's very difficult for us to pin certain things down as being really, really important. For some of you, it's your work experience or your excellent APPEs that you took, maybe research projects. Ultimately, what we really find valuable is seeing that people in school are able to do things that translate well to residency. That might be working with faculty to do research projects. It might be being a leader in your school and being able to prioritize and manage your time well. It might be being on excellent clinical APPEs and being able to hit the ground running from a therapeutic standpoint. All these things are very important, as well as many others. But you really need to bring your strengths to bear and put yourself in a position to be successful using your strengths and maximizing those. That's what generally I think helps people become a real success in their career. There are some commonalities I think we do look for in future residents, and I think teamwork is really important. The residents work together as a team very often, and it's necessary for you to be able to function as part of a team. We do expect for our residents to hit the ground running clinically, and you're on call within a month or so of starting. overnight. And so we do some training for that early on, but I think coming with a toolkit and a skill set clinically is pretty important. And then I think just we want to create leaders for the profession, agents for change in clinical pharmacy and patient advocates. And so I think having that in your mind as far as what you want your career to be, being a leader in pharmacy, that may look very different for you depending on where your interests lie and how your career unfolds. It's very difficult to predict that early on in your training. But I think having people who want to put themselves in that position to lead and make an impact on our profession and for our patients is a really important aspect of what we look for residents as well. So where do our residents go after PGY1? Well, the vast majority of the PGY1s since I've been program director here at UK have gone on to PGY2. In fact, over 90% have gone on to PGY2 residencies here at UK or somewhere else. Where they go after graduation, I would say the average graduate from UK probably starts as a clinical pharmacist or clinical specialist, usually at an academic medical center, but not always. Usually with some sort of appointment at a college of pharmacy. I think our residents are very well suited to teach as well as provide patient care. But really, that first job out is important, and we want to set you up for success with that. But I'm also very interested in where people are 5 or 10 years later, because you just never really know how your career is going to unfold. And often 5 years after graduation, you may or may not be in a clinical role anymore. You may have already moved into leadership. You may be a residency program director. You may be at a college of pharmacy. You may have gone to industry or some other path where you're using your skill set. So you really never really know exactly where you're going to go. It's hard for me to predict. I think the average position that we have people leave with is that clinical specialist type position. But I think our residents are equipped to be successful and provide leadership in a number of different varieties of venues. And we see that. We see them changing roles, 5 or 10 years into their career. And it's really exciting to see that people are able to use a lot of what they gained here in residency that may not even be patient care related, other skills, as an important part of where they go in their career. So one important thing about our research process is that the residents get to pick their own research project. Generally what happens is in the spring before you begin, I solicit ideas from preceptors for projects. A small group of experienced researchers and I go through those projects and vet them, really just to make sure, one, that they're feasible to do in a year, that they're interesting and would add to the literature, and that they're publishable, and that would be a good experience for you from beginning to end. So generally, we've got these projects that have been pretty well vetted, and the study design is more or less done. It still usually needs a little bit of work. And that's one of the first things that you would do with the project. But we'll provide a list of these projects, and each of the advisors, the people who are proposing those projects, would come and pitch those projects to you to try to convince you to pick up that project. We do that very early in the year, so you can begin in July. Every year there's people who maybe a project isn't available that they would really like to do, or in an area where they would really like to do a project. And if that's the case and you're not interested in anything that's on the menu, we have on occasion ventured off of that list and created projects for people. We did that a couple times in 2020 and in years past as well. So I think we're pretty considerate about that and trying to individualize the experience for you as best as we can. I think the caveat with that is that generally is going to be a less formed project because you're starting from the ground up, which is a really great experience for you to be able to do, but it also may put you a little bit behind. One of the things I think about with selecting research projects is picking something that you're interested in or an area that you're interested in, because it's your project and you should enjoy doing it, enjoy learning about the topic area, but also view it as a longitudinal rotation where you're really going to be able to get to know the preceptors that you're working with and the preceptors in that area. It's another way to really develop some relationships among our faculty and preceptors. But it's also important from a skill acquisition standpoint. We think about skill acquisition when it comes to the clinical environment, learning about oncology or pediatrics or learning how to do codes and stuff like that. But the research process is very similar. And I would encourage you to think about it in terms of what skills can I acquire? If I want to learn how to do a survey, or I want to learn how to do Monte Carlo simulation or multivariate regression analysis, pick a project that's going to force you to learn how to do that. And then that's a skill that you take with you when you leave. So I'd say our publication rate speaks for itself. PGY1 projects here at UK over the last 5 years or so have about a 50% publication rate, which is around 5 times the national average. So as a resident, you'll learn to write here, and we have a lot of good writers on staff. Right around 75 or 80% of my PGY1s typically leave the PGY1 year with a publication, whether it be your research project or another opportunity. So there's a lot of opportunities to write and be active in a scholarly way here at UK. We're often asked about the culture of pharmacy at UK and the multidisciplinary nature of the care that's provided here. We're an academic medical center, so there's a lot of learners, and I think not just pharmacy, but in medicine and nursing and other disciplines. And that education process is brought to bear on rounds and how we approach patient care. So you're a part of that. You're an important part. On rounds, almost all of our clinical services round, and as the resident, you're the pharmacist on the service. The preceptors do not round with you typically, so you're pretty autonomous from that standpoint. There are going to be many opportunities for you to have students on rotation as well, where you can do some precepting. The teams really look to the pharmacist to provide drug information, but also we do a lot with monitoring, appropriate monitoring of patients, and then other logistical challenges related to discharge or other things facilitating care. There are many teams that have had a pharmacist on rounds for the last 50 years. And so there's definitely shoes for you to sort of fit into and a role on that service that is well ingrained. It's not uncommon for them to not start rounds until you're there. And so you're just another example of how you're an integral part of the team and we start without you in many cases. I think when COVID began to be an issue in the spring of 2020, one of the major things that we did when we moved many of our people virtual for a few weeks, in some cases a month and a half, the residents and the pharmacists helped the teams create a virtual rounding model so that everyone could participate and we could minimize the number of people who were actually on site whenever possible. Pharmacy played a huge role in that. The teams were very receptive of the fact that we needed to make some adjustments in those early days when we didn't really know what to do and what was going on. And I think that spoke well to the fact that they saw the value in us participating and being there, and really bent over backwards to make sure that virtual rounding became something that could be easily done, and that the uptake on that was going to be really good, and it turned out really well. I think the other aspect is, as a resident, you're going to rotate on many different rotations, and you're going to see people that around the hospital that you've worked with over the months, and they'll still ask you questions even though you're not together anymore. So those relationships you develop last you throughout the whole year and sometimes beyond. So it's a really great culture and relationship that we have with the physician staff and others. This is due in part to the relationships that the preceptors have with the medical faculty. We're all sort of specialists in our given areas. So I work with neurosurgery, and my relationships are with those physicians, and my strong relationships in that area trickle down to how the pharmacist works on that service. And it's like that for virtually all of our services here. So you benefit from those relationships. Even if I'm not on rounds, there's a specific role for pharmacy on all of these teams. UK is an academic medical center, and there are so many opportunities for teaching. You'll probably have to start pushing them away at some point, if rather than wondering when you're going to get one. There's opportunities in the classroom as part of the teaching certificate program. There's also opportunities in lab, which is also part of the teaching certificate program. That program was created by UK. We're really the initiator, the inaugural program for teaching certificates. Since then, in the last 5 or 6 years, we've sold that program to ASHP. So if you do the ASHP teaching certificate program, that's our faculty, that's our people that do most of that programming. Through that, you learn a lot about precepting, and just academia, and general principles of teaching. You also get some practical experience in the classroom and in the patient care lab, as I mentioned. Probably the vast majority of your teaching is on service. The residents round as the primary pharmacist. You know, I'm a preceptor. I don't round with the resident. They're the primary pharmacist on the team. And so when there's a student on service, you're at minimum responsible for sort of deploying the student in the right ways for patient care. So you're on a day-to-day basis sort of in charge of making sure that the student's looking at the right patients, and that all the tasks like med histories and documenting drug levels and those sorts of things are done, and sort of facilitating the student's experience with that. Now, you're almost never a preceptor of record. That stays with the preceptors, because we have a formal relationship with the College of Pharmacy. But that doesn't mean that you don't give the student feedback, or that you might be in charge of doing topic discussions or something like that, depending on the rotation. So a high degree of interaction with students. It's as much or as little, I guess, as you want. I'd say it's a little bit of a luck of the draw as far as what number of students you might get. But I think through 2020, pretty much all of our residents have had a student on rotation nearly every month, especially the clinical rotations. So it's you know, we have 20, 30 students here every block. And so there's no shortage of student learners for you to have some teaching experiences with. Mentorship and advising is very important for our residents, and there are several different routes for you to have more senior people help you through this process. Number one, you have myself as a program director, and Dean Ali, who is our assistant program director. And you know, we take that responsibility very seriously to make sure that you are having as good an experience here as a resident as you possibly can. And we spend a lot of time planning and trying to sort of remove obstacles from your path so that you can be successful. Much of your experience as a resident is going to be driven by yourself and you sort of taking the bull by the horns and having your own experiences. But the more that we can do to make that easy for you to do is a priority. We also assign you an advisor early in the year. That'll be a more veteran preceptor who knows how to navigate UK really well. The advisor does a lot of your quarterly evaluations. They may help you navigate the early commit process or the job process as that kind of comes up. They may help you with strategizing your rotation selection or which projects you may want to work with and that sort of thing. The advisor and I are also unofficial members of your research committee, so that we can kind of keep tabs on the progress of your research and how that is unfolding through the year. We also have a new program called Wellness Warrior, which is another preceptor. It's usually anonymous. I mean, I don't know who the residents' wellness warriors are, but that tends to be somebody who maybe is a little bit more focused not on your residency experience and are you meeting your goals and objectives and how are you doing on your research project and are you meeting deadlines and that sort of thing, but more just, are you getting rest? Are you able to exercise? Do you eat all the hospital food, or do you bring your lunch every once in a while? Do you go out and have fun every once in a while? More about your wellness and as a person outside of work, and potentially interactions at work as well. But it's the temptation for the program directors and the advisors is to make sure that the residency experience and your travel through the residency experience is going well. The wellness warrior has that luxury of being able to not have their eyes on the residency experience or hospital experience at all, but just use a person. Mentorship is different. Mentors is a personal thing that you develop. And I can't assign a mentor to you. You're going to have many mentors in your career, and that's something that you need to develop. There'll be people that have common interests or people that you just click with. And we've got a tremendous number of preceptors and faculty here that are really varied and bring a lot to the table. And so I think with the depth and breadth of the people that we have here, you're going to find people most likely that you connect with and have similar interests and that you know are going to be able to help you and you can trust throughout your career. So mentors are much more of a personal thing, but the advisor and the wellness warrior is something that we facilitate and that will kind of follow you through the year. Many applicants want to know what their interaction with preceptors is going to be like. Do we meet with you every day? You know, how autonomous are you? Well, I think from the very beginning of July, you're the pharmacist on the service. The preceptors almost never will round with you on any rotation. And so you're very autonomous from a clinical standpoint. I mean, we let you spend the night in the hospital with the on-call program. So, you know, you should be pretty autonomous during the day as well if we're going to let you spend the night and answer questions and provide emergency response and all of that. We do give you a fair amount of autonomy with teaching and precepting as well. I think that's one of those areas where maybe residents are a little bit less prepared than they might be clinically, in an area where you may feel like that you need to reach out a little bit more for advice, especially when you have learners that are not self-motivated and where you might need a little bit of extra advice or help. Research is another area where we probably give a little bit more guidance because most people come to us out of pharmacy school without a lot of formal research experiences. And, unlike what they would see clinically, where I think most people that we get are able to hit the ground running. So you're very autonomous from an interaction from a preceptor standpoint and being on rotation. I'd say on average, the preceptors are going to meet with you daily, at least an hour, give or take, to talk about patients, to do topics and that sort of thing. We've got great depth in our preceptor group to where you will probably get a lot of team precepting. So you may not have a single preceptor for the entire duration of your rotation experience, but we all work together on teams. And so that's a pretty common thing to see that preceptors would work together to make your rotation experience cohesive and successful.